So, one of the funniest things about Kashin Koji might actually be the fact that despite seeing thousands upon thousands and millions upon millions of different futures, Boruto keeps finding brand new ways to give this guy a migraine. Kind of fitting, just given the fact that Naruto used to give Jiraiya a ton of migraines too. Imagine being blessed with the ability to see countless timelines, countless outcomes, countless possibilities, only for a 15-year-old ninja with a hero complex to continuously look at your roadmap and say, nah, I'd rather improvise. Let's just take the scenic route. Because that's exactly what happened with Code when it comes to Boruto. And the scariest part isn't that Boruto let Code escape. The scary part is that Kashin Koji outright confirmed the timeline that has started changing all over again. And Chapter 35 sneak peek that we just got yesterday, if it's any indication, Boruto may have already taken steps to create yet another future that Kashin Koji might not have seen coming. Which means Boruto Two Blue Vortex, that future is becoming more unstable by the moment. And honestly, that's exactly why the story is becoming more dangerous and why you should care, both for the characters as well as for us as readers. Join me in today's newest Naruto Explained video where your OBC, your original Boruto chief, takes a look at why the sneak peek that we just got might be setting the stage for a more timeline effery than we ever signed up for, and why strictly from a narrative perspective, this is ultimately a good thing that you should care about. Also, don't forget to check out my new One Piece video on my Everything One Piece Explained channel, and the new Minato video that we uploaded a few days ago that does a super in-depth breakdown on every version of Minato from childhood to teenage to adult years, as well as Edo Tensei. Both will be linked in the description box and in credits for those who are interested. Lastly, the chapter drops on the 18th this month, so we are on spoiler watch. When full spoilers do drop, we'll definitely talk about them, and the review will ideally be up on the 18th, if not a day or two afterwards, depending on how things shake out next week. So thank you in advance for your patience. So when chapter 34 dropped last month, most people focused on one thing: Boruto letting Code live. I think that we could agree that that was the biggest topic after the Sakura and Sarada conversation that got blown way out of proportion, way beyond its narrative intent, because people just focused on the shipping aspect. But that Boruto Code scene was as big of a red flag as any person suddenly coughing at random in a slice of life anime. You know that it's going to be leading to something bigger and darker and potentially heartbreaking. On the surface, it looked like a terrible decision. Code is dangerous to a degree. Code, I think we all would agree, is really unstable. No way you can take that many L's and not come out with some mental issues. Code has already created multiple disasters because he refused to listen to Boruto about the dangers of the Ten Tails, and we've seen what's happened. We've been thrust into the Shinju Saga vortex as a result. And perhaps most importantly, Kashin Koji specifically warned Boruto about what could happen if Code remained free if Boruto didn't kill him. One future showed Code joining Boruto, though Koji's like, that's a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, fam, it's probably never going to happen. But another showed him targeting Sarada. That future also showed Boruto ultimately surrendering himself to Jura in exchange for Sarada's life. From Kashin Koji's perspective, that's not speculation, that's a really good guess by Jiraiya's clone. Or one way to view it is that it was a crackpot theory that came true. 10 Directions is based on probabilities, and Kashin Koji knows the variables at play here, and that Sarada is Boruto's thumbscrew, the one thing, the one weakness that can unravel him as quickly as anything happening to one of Boruto's family members. The one thing that can take Boruto from being coldly logical to suddenly making decisions based on emotion. And as we see countless times, these decisions aren't always well thought out. They're driven by the heart and the luck that comes from being so unpredictable that it bails Boruto out at times. But Kashin Koji has seen timelines where that luck runs out. It's not as indefinite as Dr. Doom's hatred for Reed Richards, which runs so deep the guy refused to help the wife of Reed give birth unless he can name their daughter Valeria. Also, every time Reed said his daughter's name, he'd be forced to think of him. Be like Kashin Koji, be like Dr. Doom, be logical, and most importantly, be petty. Just as Doom placed a spell in secret on Reed's daughter, Kashin Koji has to start thinking twice about what info he gives Boruto. Boruto will take matters into his own hands, and Koji's trying to prevent the worst possible future that he's already witnessed unfold a few different times, Jura killing Boruto. And that's why Kashin Koji's furious, because from his point of view, Boruto had just ignored a warning sign painting a giant red set of letters for Boruto to look at. Koji also revealed something that should change how we as readers end up viewing the story. The timeline is shifting. Again, for the third or the fourth time since we got that detailed explanation about 10 directions, another shift has occurred. And that's important because it means the future is no longer a straight line. It's becoming a battlefield that is increasingly seeing the battle line shift. Every major choice now creates that ripple effect, and those ripple effects all come with new variables. Every act of compassion by Boruto, the recklessness, the sacrifice, the stubbornness, and you wait for it, the love, it creates entirely new possibilities. Boruto isn't simply following fate anymore. He's actively fighting against it, even if he doesn't realize it. Then again, this is Boruto, the son of Naruto. He's probably looking at fate and everything written out and saying, that shit is optional because I have main character energy right now. Cue the meme of infinite aura. So chapter 35 of Boruto Two Blue Vortex has a lot of potential when you sit down and you think about it from that perspective, because I think something extremely important is happening. In that sneak peek, Sarada is left with a special kunai. While there's nothing officially confirmed yet, we don't know who gave it to him, but what if that kunai does belong to Boruto? What if it is essentially a flying Raijin marker? What if Boruto already anticipated the probability of Sarada becoming a target and is making a safeguard? But most importantly, what if he's going against what Kashin Koji stated? Because Koji's nightmare scenario becomes a lot harder to execute if Boruto's making a set of contingencies. Think about it. Code captures Sarada. Boruto immediately teleports because Ada can tell him what's happening in real time. Code attempts the ambush. Boruto instantly appears. Hostage situation forms. Boruto pulls out the reverse Uno card. Now suddenly Code isn't the one with the leverage. Instead, he's got a Rasengan in the face. The moment that kunai entered Sarada's possession, the rules potentially changed, because what's a future set in stone to a child of Naruto? It's optional. Fate is merely a suggestion to be followed when the bloodline of Naruto Uzumaki views fate as being as easy as pressing Ctrl-Alt-Delete on your keyboard. And that's exactly the kind of thing that Kashin Koji can't perfectly account for anymore. Which is ironic since he sees all the probable timelines, and yet Boruto is a walking human eraser that scrubs all of Kashin Koji's plans right after they're made. He's that pesky editor who looks at your story and says, hey, that's cool, but what if we try this instead? Every new action creates new branches. Every new branch creates a new timeline. Just like a new editorial assistant makes a suggestion to the story that you have, and suddenly you open up new possibilities that you didn't think were possible. And every new outcome also creates weaknesses that Kashin Koji did not see in the timeline. From a narrative perspective, and this is the most important part, from a narrative perspective, this is actually brilliant, because one of the biggest dangers that any story faces is predictability. Let me restate that. One of the biggest dangers in any story that it faces is predictability. To a certain degree, you want to follow genre rules because people go into a story expecting certain things. Like with a gateway shonen, you expect a happy ending. When you go with a open ending or a controversial ending where it can be argued that the main character didn't get everything they wanted, people rebel, because people come to stories like these looking for a certain amount of escape. But the good writer, the bold writer, isn't above shaking things up. So the moment that readers believe they know everything's getting ready to happen, the tension starts dying. That's why good writers every now and then will choose to rarely give the audiences exactly what they're expecting. Instead, they take your expectations and they weaponize it. A better way to put it is they begin to subvert your expectations. The best examples of stories that do this, in my opinion, in terms of manga format that are battle shonen, would be probably Hell's Paradise, definitely Chainsaw Man, definitely Attack on Titan, and even though it's not a true battle shonen, Fire Punch by Tatsuki Fujimoto is another good one. So this is the problem though. A lot of people misunderstand what a subversion is. It's, I think, a large part due to the memes that are out there about subverting expectations. So basically, you are doing something that feels surprising while also still making it make sense. And that's the important part that people miss. Anybody can create shock value, but meaningful surprises require setup. The audience believes that one outcome is inevitable. Then the writer reveals hidden information that changes how everything is viewed. And then when they go back and reread the story, they see the breadcrumbs that were building towards it. Suddenly, the pieces, they were always there. The audience just didn't see them. They fell for the red herrings. That's what a good writer can do. That's where magic truly happens. And it's exactly what Ikimoto is doing by having all these timeline shifts. Think about how readers initially interpreted Koji's visions. Many people treated them almost like spoilers. If Koji saw it, then it must happen. If Koji predicted it, then the future was locked in. Sure, there are some wrinkles that could change things, but for the most part, when we saw this, we're like, hey, Koji's got a roadmap, that's fine. But we've seen that that assumption has been collapsing. Timelines that Koji saw, they're always in flux, and that's a good thing. Because the moment that readers stop viewing the visions as guarantees, every scene becomes more dangerous. Now every choice matters, especially if it's a informed choice by someone like Boruto. Every conversation matters. More importantly, every fight matters, because any moment can create a divergence. Even when you're following the plan, you can create a divergence even without realizing it. That's what happened in the Mamushi fight. That's why things escalated as they did. That allows for a moment where certainty disappears for us as readers. And uncertainty is one of the greatest storytelling tools that any author can possess, especially if they know how to use it. Because uncertainty creates tension. Tension creates investment. Investment is compounded by the conflict that you're rolling into it. And that conflict leads to an emotional payoff. You've heard me say it before. Every good story has conflict. You cannot tell a story without conflict. And I do kind of feel like this is where some stories fail, especially a lot of gateway shonen. Many writers, they want a payoff. They want that emotional climax. They want that big victory. They want that triumphant moment. But sometimes the authors don't fully embrace the struggle that the characters are required to go through in order to earn it. And as a result, you can probably think of a few series where the victories feel hollow. Characters succeeded, and you could say it's because the plot demanded it. Not because they fought for it, not because the character grew, not because they changed, just because of plot arc. That's one of the reasons why I do enjoy Naruto's manga. Naruto's manga was able to walk that line very great. It was a gateway shonen, but what we got to in volume 72 at the ending, that was something that was earned. The whole reason why I like doing those what ifs is when you sit back and you look at so much of the Naruto timeline, you realize how much things had to go a certain way, break a certain way, where if one change happens, it messes everything up and you likely lead to a timeline where Kaguya ends up being revived. That's how you know a story was structured for a good payoff. Best payoffs are earned through resistance. The audience, as a reader, you have to feel the weight of every setback, every mistake, loss, sacrifice. Only when those things hold some emotional baggage on the reader does the victory matter. And that emotional baggage doesn't just have to be on the reader. It just has to mainly be applied to the characters in universe, but it really helps if the readers are really invested in the characters. Boruto's story is becoming stronger now because his own choices keep making things harder. A great example is how he just let Code go. Now we have consequences that could emerge as a result. Boruto is continuously rejecting Koji's logic, and as a result, we've seen continuously that new futures have been formed. We're seeing that clash of compassion versus pragmatism. In a way, we're kind of seeing what would have happened if Jiraiya didn't have his heart weakened by Naruto. If you go back to Naruto Volume 27, Jiraiya flat out tells Naruto, give up on Sasuke. I've seen this story before. He's a rogue ninja. He can't be saved. If you won't listen to me, then I'll have Tsunade lock you down with the Anbu Black Ops. You won't get to do anything. That was Jiraiya taking a pragmatic approach. That is an approach that Kashin Koji would have taken. Instead, Jiraiya chose to listen to his heart. Kashin Koji isn't doing that. Both instances are not bad writing. Instead, that is character-driven storytelling. Even though Jiraiya and his clone have made different decisions, it is character-driven storytelling, and that's what matters. Boruto's greatest obstacle, it isn't Jura, it isn't Kawaki, it isn't Code. Instead, it's the consequences of Boruto being Boruto. Naruto as a franchise has been exploring this for decades. The concept of cycles, the concept of vortexes. Naruto borrowed very heavily from Buddhist philosophy, particularly the idea of suffering. That is what samsara is. Reoccurring conflict, attachments, mistakes. That is the concept of samsara, the endless cycle of birth, death, suffering, and rebirth. Individuals continue moving through these cycles until they achieve enlightenment and they break free. Naruto repeatedly used this concept narratively. It wasn't just with the reincarnates of Ashura and Indra. It explored it with the concept that hatred created more hatred, violence created more violence. Generations inherited burdens from previous generations. The story continuously had a cycle, but with Boruto has been trying to break free of that cycle. That is the whole point of part 1. That is the whole point of part 2. Boruto has been experiencing samsara through all those alternate timelines. Every future is another cycle, another timeline possibility, mistakes compounding, corrections that are made by Boruto and Kashin Koji to break free of those timelines that Koji saw. That is him trying to rise above that cycle of samsara. And yet, in the same way that Boruto, by following his heart, is throwing himself back into that cycle, that's why you have a good payoff being set up. That is why these timeline shifts matter so much. They're not plot twists. They're not meant to just keep reading guessing. They're reflections of the central themes of the franchise itself. Growth and choice and consequences, cycles. Basically, it's saying that the future isn't predetermined. Your future is whatever it is that you choose to make it to be. The future is not set in stone. The future is something that you can negotiate. Every day, you watching this video, you wake up one day and you decide, I'm going to put my pants on, I'm going to put my skirt on, I'm going to go out and make whatever impact I'm going to have the day. You make the decision. You are in charge of your future. It's the same with these characters. And with Boruto, every relationship changes those outcomes. And nowhere is that more evident than his relationship with Sarada. I'm not talking about this from a romantic perspective. If you're in the Patreon Discord server, you know exactly how I feel. If it was up to me, I would have Boruto hook up with Ada just to see the Boruto and Sumire and Boruto and Sarada fans completely melt down. I do not care for ships. But if Boruto truly leaving behind that flying Raijin marker on that kunai was a safeguard, then there's a possibility he changed the future yet again. This time through preparation and through trust and through compassion. And I kind of feel like that's ironic because the more that Boruto has been shown rejecting fate, the more unpredictable timelines have become as a result. And I think that it's setting up for a payoff where the very thing that keeps creating danger may also be the very thing that saves everyone, that obviously being Boruto. And I feel like that's where Ikimoto is heading with the story. The constantly shifting timeline isn't a flaw. I kind of feel like that's the point because of the future that Boruto was never meant to walk down. Instead, it's supposed to be the future that Boruto gets before omnipotence is replaced. And I do want to just kind of say this. This is a precursor video to something I want to kind of touch on with Kashin Koji, because now I feel more emboldened than ever before to double down on something. So In the meantime, click here on the left to check out the Minato video I mentioned earlier, or above that, check out the sneak peek if you didn't see that, or click here on the right for the Everything One Piece Explained video.